You're listening to Monday Science Podcast, the show that brings you the latest in science, technology, and health with your host, me, Dr. Bahija Raimi Abraham.
Hello and welcome back to Monday Science. Happy Monday, happy Bank Holiday Monday for our listeners in the UK. Today we've got yet another exciting episode. I always feel like I say exciting or interesting quite often, but it's because I do actually find everything about the podcast exciting and interesting. So yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's kick off with the Monday Science Person of the Week. And also, do let us know. I hope you are enjoying the Monday Science Person of the Week and also our new segment. Do keep us informed of how you're feeling and give us feedback on the new structure. And you can do that via email, info@mondaysciencepodcast.com, or you can send us a DM on our social media. We're on Instagram and Twitter. Okay, so the Monday Science Person of the Week goes to Sangeeta Chopra, and she's a scientist at the Indian Agriculture Research Institute in New Delhi, India. Sangeeta has a background in electrical power electronics engineering and has a doctorate in energy science and technology. Sangeeta's research works on developing evaporatively cooled structures for perishables, storage, and for livestock comfort. Very interesting work that she does there. And so Sangeeta, in collaboration with scientists from Michigan State University, created an on-farm green energy refrigeration system, which allows farmers to minimize post-harvest loss, which is a big deal because obviously if you can minimize the post-harvest loss, then that's obviously going to save money and help not just the farmers but also the community. So this is really, really big because, as I mentioned, it helps a very large community control when they can sell their produce, as they don't have to rely on distress sales. So this is really cutting edge work. So congratulations to Dr. Sangeeta Chopra. So in terms of the news, now in episode 27, and also it was in our recap episode, episode 59, but this was the original episode, episode 27. This was in honor of World Diabetes Day, and I discussed the impact of COVID-19 and diabetes, like the understanding at the time. And so in today's news, researchers from King's College London, this is not a biased, I will just say it's not a biased news extract. So researchers from King's College London and Monash University, which is based in Australia, they established the COVID Diab registry last year, which was to compile detailed reports of COVID-19 related diabetes in order to investigate whether COVID-19 can result in diabetes. And so roughly around 350 clinicians have submitted reports to date. And this is reports on, any case reports is what they're usually called, where they're giving like an overview of any interesting cases that they've seen, what they did, the key findings or the key observations. And so, although other viral infections, such as flu, have previously been implicated in new cases of diabetes, and this is sort of I think this is the main thing that people are trying to understand with COVID-19 in general. What is the impact of COVID-19, in particular with patients who were seemingly healthy beforehand? What is the impact afterwards? So, what diseases and conditions do they develop? One of the things it's looking into is diabetes. And so a metabolic disease researcher who's called Rabassa Lauret, she stated that the magnitude of what we see with COVID-19 is above what we're used to. Wow. She believes it's highly probable that COVID-19 is triggering the disease, i.e., diabetes. This is very interesting, and I think we're going to see more on the impact of COVID-19 in the long term. Personally, I'm quite interested to see if there's any link, and if anybody knows, please let us know. But if there's any link between COVID-19 and, well, it might be too soon to tell, but COVID-19 and onset of dementia, because some people have experienced symptoms of confusion, memory loss, and things like that. So let's see. I think as we're moving, can I say further into the pandemic? Yeah, I guess we're moving further into the pandemic and hopefully on our way out of the pandemic, there's going to be more research, more understanding of the impacts of COVID-19 as well. Okay, so on to today's episode. So this is an interesting episode with Mr. Farhad Hussein, who is a chemistry teacher. And it's the first time having a teacher on the podcast, which was good. But also, this is one of our episodes that is funded and supported by the Royal Society of Chemistry, and very detailed interview on the impact of chemistry in his life and science education, which was very enlightening. But then also we talked about the impact of COVID-19 on education and specifically science education. And there were some insights that Farhad was able to give that it just felt different to what we're sort of hearing in the news. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Let us know what you think. Okay, so welcome back to Monday Science. And today we have our first ever teacher on the podcast. We have Mr. Forhad Hussein. Hello, Farhad.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on the podcast. So let's just kick things off by asking you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a science teacher. I teach in a school in Essex, and I have been teaching for around 6 years. So in the teaching profession for 6 years, and so I've been born and brought up in London to Bangladeshi parents. Myself, who migrated in the 80s to the UK. And that's just a bit about my background and what I do at the moment.
Lovely, thank you for that. So I've gotten into this phase of asking people certain questions, a lot of the guests certain questions. And this is partly because obviously, as you know, we are in a global pandemic and lockdown, and a lot of people have used this time to get more familiar with music, with films, with books. So do you have a favorite song at this moment?
Not necessarily a favorite song, but I do like listening to conscious music. So music, with a focus and about issues sometimes. So whether it be politics, whether it be world affairs. So that type of genre, or if we can call it that.
Oh, nice. And do you have any particular artist that you listen to?
So a couple of artists maybe that go by the names of Low Key, and there's another artist called Akala, and the music by these artists is sometimes quite conscious and with the times and where we are as society. So that's quite enjoyable sometimes to listen to.
Yes, I do like Akala, actually. I've listened to a few of his tracks. And what about films, or if you can recommend a film or a books to our listeners?
So going back to Akala, he wrote a book actually called Natives, and it's about race and class and how they're linked, and especially in the UK. So it's a fascinating read. It's really educational, and it's one that I'd thoroughly recommend.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that. And as you know, this episode today is funded and is part of our Royal Society of Chemistry Outreach Fund project. And so I guess the next fitting question is, what is chemistry to you?
Right. Chemistry to me. So for me as a educator, someone that teaches chemistry to students between the ages of 11 and 18, it's everything I see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and all the chemical reactions involved. It's chemistry to me is trying to understand the world and then passing on this understanding to my students that I teach on a daily basis. So it's instilling that appreciation for matter and the changes it can undergo and shape the world around us. So that's what really chemistry means to me. Myself.
That's amazing. Thank you. And that just sounds like such a amazing outlook for chemistry. And I think it's so interesting interviewing different people and asking that same question. And it just shows the depth and breadth of chemistry and what it means to so many different people. And so I'm interested in getting more into your thoughts on the intersection between science and education. So do you mind just talking about your journey into education and specifically science education, and what made you decide to become a secondary school science teacher and now a secondary school chemistry teacher?
Sure. So my journey into education and science education really from my when I was studying myself. So I studied science at GCSE level, and at the time I didn't know what triple science was as a separate course. I had limited information about what was available, and I think that was quite common amongst education and teaching back then. Um, Now, from GCSE onwards, I went on to study science A levels. So I studied biology, I did chemistry too. And other subjects I actually took alongside biology and chemistry were politics and maths A level too. Now, my direction towards these courses was, I think, pinpointed more by being from a Bangladeshi background, so family-wise, sciences were more preferred and we were just more directed in that way. And because of the influence towards the sciences, I went on to study, I thought I wanted to study medicine actually. And just because of the limited information I had, it meant that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went on to study biomedical science, and I spent a long, long time around dentists, medics at university. So in that science sphere still. And then really upon completing my undergraduate, I was invited by email to attend a taster day in a school in South London, in Sidcup. And that would be my first exposure to teaching. So going from education and from university really directly. So when visiting for this taster day, really that just kind of swayed me and planted that seed really in my head of teaching, maybe going into teaching as a real possibility. And I never really looked back. So I applied, did the training, and 6 years on, here I am.
That's absolutely amazing. And when you were talking about the difference between triple science and double science, because I just remember I did triple science, I believe, and yeah, it's interesting you talked about how, maybe that wasn't always communicated and explained to people. I just knew, oh, okay, I'm doing triple science. I didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. And it's really, is that still something, is triple science, I only learned recently that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I only learned recently that the grades are no longer A, B, C, D when it comes to GCSEs, that it's now numbers. Is that true?
No, indeed, that's been true for I think around 3 years now, maybe
Oh
4 years.
gosh. Yeah. So
Honestly, many changes, many changes. But now schooling, I really do feel it's come a long way.
yeah,
Like to schooling when I went to school myself, I feel schooling these days has has improved so much. There's more information. Everyone's more aware. Parents, the students. There's more information out there, and schools are doing more to get that information out there. Like teaching has come a long way. I couldn't be more prouder of the profession.
amazing, amazing. And so, is triple science and double science still a thing, or is it different? What has changed in that area?
Indeed, so it's still there, and I'm pretty sure it was there back then too. But it's just the information we had access to
Right. Yeah.
back then. Our parents too, we never really knew the difference. So I don't think many of us knew the difference back then. I do think schools do a lot more now to get that information across, and it's getting across more too, actually.
Amazing. And so, what do you think differentiates science education from, let's say, subjects such as history or yeah, any other subject really?
Um, I do think that education in different subjects varies significantly. So you have subjects like you mentioned, history or English, and they tend to be quite subjective, and the teaching of those subjects needs different strategies and techniques compared to teaching maths or sciences. So I do think that teaching the different subjects, it does require different practices in order for it to work. And I do think that's because the subjects are different in terms of what's required. Now, with science, I've found that students, they come to see science as being like a different language, and sometimes even a bigger language, in the sense it's 3 languages in one. So biology, chemistry, and physics. So they feel like it's not one subject, it's a 3 in 1. Then there's maths involved in science at the moment. So 20%, if I'm not mistaken, of an exam is maths, maths based, of a biology exam or a chemistry exam or a physics exam. So they feel that it's already a harder subject to tackle than English or history.
Wow, that's very interesting. And because that's actually one of the reasons why I was asking, trying to differentiate between being a science teacher versus being a chemistry teacher. Because I'm guessing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but with the science, you're teaching, I guess, all of the science. And as you said, maybe maths is also included in there. And then with chemistry, it's just purely on the chemistry. Is that right?
So it's just quite difficult, and it can vary slightly, but generally speaking, and I think mainstream wise in most schools, you'll have science teachers, and at year 7, year 8, year 9, and combined science in year 10, you'd have one science teacher that teaches you biology, chemistry, and physics. That's the typical traditional model. And you have your and then you have your specialist teacher, so biology specialist or chemistry specialist or physics specialist, teaching the triple classes. Now, those teachers might also teach year 9, so they'll be teaching all 3 sciences to the younger year anyway. So that's generally the format.
Right, very interesting. And so I guess within that sort of context, what is the process of translating sort of complex chemical mechanisms into something that is comprehensible for secondary school students?
And that, like, the answer to that question is literally the art of teaching. It's literally about getting students involved, all your students involved, regardless of their level that they're working at. So teachers have strategies, develop strategies, research-based strategies too, proven to work in studies. So you have these models and ways of thinking. So one of which is something called scaffolding. So you put in the necessary support to help students to reach that point. So it's about chunking, it's about making it all manageable. So honestly, that question is the $1 million question in teaching, and we have answers to, we've got guidance towards, and everyone slowly, schools are getting on board and they're employing these strategies that are research-based and research backed, really.
Wow, that's amazing. Scaffolding, I've never heard of it. So do you think then that with, I mean, these approaches, is there a risk of by like oversimplifying science, or do you think that there's still that the core of the fundamentals and the complexities are still taught and understood with these various approaches?
Definitely. So I think it's all about appropriateness. And I think that there's a time and place to be technical and advanced with science and chemistry, and different stages in education require and appreciate different levels of students. And so you need to just provide different levels of scaffolding and support to help them to make progress. So I don't think we're necessarily oversimplifying, but that it does need to be scaffolded, to use the word again, so that we can, it's appropriate and it's right and it's not too much too soon.
I think that's a really amazing insight as well. And so what do you enjoy most about being a chemistry teacher? And I guess, okay, we'll start off with what do you enjoy the most, and then we'll talk about what do you enjoy the least.
Sure. With being a teacher and a chemistry teacher, a science teacher, I enjoy, and there's actually a difference teaching, let's say, biology to teaching chemistry. So for example, with chemistry, you'd be able to enjoy being able to do more experiments, more hands-on practicals with the students, with demonstrations for them to get involved and actually collect results, collect the volume of a gas, react an acid with a different metal, for example. So they can actually see the chemistry and partake and actually collect results that they can observe compared to, let's say, biology or physics. While there are experiments for them to do for themselves and see firsthand, I think with the chemistry, there is that wow factor. So really getting students involved in those experiences, knowing that 10 years down the line, it's going to be something they remember, is probably what I enjoy most about being a chemistry teacher.
Yeah, that's so interesting you say that. As you were talking, it was taking me back to well, a long time ago, my own sort of chemistry and chemistry lessons and science lessons. And I think, yeah, what you were saying about with chemistry, it did feel like you saw more things, especially when you did like the flame test and remembering all which colors gave orange. I think that's sodium, is it? And one gave what is the one that gave the red? No, not red, sorry, green. Is it? I can't remember the green flame test. And am I thinking of the flame or yeah, green flame test and all these different things. And I think you just feel so engaged in it, because chemistry was actually my personal favorite topic at school. And I do think, yeah, just being able to see things really made me feel more engaged with it. But I guess I don't know if in biology they do dissections and things now. I'm not sure if that's still a thing. Sorry, I feel like I'm so dated with my knowledge of what goes on in school.
No, a lot has happened, but a lot has also stayed the same.
Right.
So, and the practicals, the experiments, like the flame tests, definitely they're powerful, right? For students to get involved in science, it's powerful. It's really, really powerful. And in biology, you're totally right. We do dissections, and again, they literally love it. Well, you've got the core group that love it, the idea of being able to do these dissections. And then you also have a few that are a bit squeamish and the smell and they're put off by and they don't really want to get too stuck in. But no, definitely that's one thing about teaching, about education, that is powerful and science teachers and chemistry teachers we can use to draw our students in, our main stakeholders.
Definitely. And so, yeah, what would you say you'd least enjoy in the role?
Least I'd enjoy, or in the role I do anyway, I think it would be the admin part of the job, so the bureaucratic part,
yes, of
demand,
course.
that is just constantly increasing. So mainly that element of it, not necessarily being in the classroom. It's just all the added extra on the side, the before, the after.
Yeah, I think admin for most educators, in regardless if it's secondary or primary or higher education, it's a lot. It's such a burden.
No,
Yeah.
No, indeed, it really is. It is such the bureaucratic part of it, the paperwork, just adds so much onto the job that isn't necessarily, or it's definitely not the most important part of the job. The most important part of the job is being in front of the class of 30 students, young minds, shaping those minds and passing on knowledge. That's the most important part. But we all get drawn up in every job, I guess, with the paper trail that needs to be done alongside it.
Very, very true. And so I get that. I guess moving on from that and sort of adding to that in a way, what are your thoughts and opinions on the current state of science education?
Science education itself, I do think, is in a good place. It's a real, it's come a long way, and there's movement towards a more standardized approach. So students receive a similar diet as possible. So what they're taught, and the exam boards that assess at GCSE level, for example, they're broadly in line with each other. And research and educational research specifically is coming down into education and filtering through to us practitioners. So No, teaching is in a good state, and science education itself is in a good state too, more so.
That's really good to know. I'm not sure if you ever got a chance to watch Sir Ken Robinson, who unfortunately passed away recently. He gave a very famous TED talk titled "Do Schools Kill Creativity?" And Sir Ken Robinson was a creativity expert, and he challenged the way we educate, or wanted to challenge the way we educate our children, and championing a radical rethink of how school systems cultivate creativity and acknowledge multiple types of intelligence. So what are your thoughts on this? And is the issue of adding creativity, and well, I guess, what are your thoughts on this and the issue of adding creativity in our current education system? Or perhaps now there is more creativity in our education system?
So a couple of years ago, actually, now I completed or started my MA in education. And I remember the professor showing us the video. So Sir Ken Robinson's video, the TED Talk. Now, definitely it was an amazing speech and piece on Sir Ken's thoughts on teaching. And it was really well put and really interesting. Now, as a teacher, however, an educator and a person in the profession, having not taught necessarily for many years, but nevertheless with a decent amount of experience still, I would disagree. Sir Ken was of the opinion schools killed children's innate creative talents. I don't think I agree. I think that creativity is encouraged in schools through the performing arts, through the expressive arts. And I think that teachers passing on creativity themselves through the subject is there. These professions are thriving in the UK, in the Western world. So I would disagree with Sir Ken's claim that creativity is stifled in education. I really would. I wouldn't agree.
Wow. Okay. No, that's very interesting. And so I guess moving on from that, what are your thoughts on the use of arts in science education?
So different schools generally, right, have different models or different approaches. So you've got schools that adopt different styles and are slightly more disciplinarian. You've got schools, sorry, that try to lead by a model of direct instruction. So it's a lot of teacher-led teaching versus or as opposed to student-led teaching models. So while I do think creativity is very important in teaching methods and how we pass on knowledge to our students, it's easy to get distracted and think, oh, you have to be very creative in your teaching. There's recently been studies showing that when very creative methods are used, like show-stopping moves, experiments, just to draw the learner in, what ends up happening is the students remember how it was taught rather than what was taught. And of course, that's a problem. So we've been under the false impression and false idea that if we can engage our students by doing whiz-bang lessons and fireworks lessons, that they'd remember the learning more for when they need to in an exam, when actually it's the opposite. So, and it's the case that no, what happens is they remember the firework and not necessarily the chemistry involved during the burning of that firework in the combustion of it. So, yeah, so creativity is definitely important and the arts are definitely important. But you do have to just bear that in mind, really, when you are teaching something important, you'd want to focus on it rather than distract from it with something show-stopping.
Yeah, I think I understand that as well. And so do you then think that we're doing, I say we, I guess, yeah, general we, are we doing a good job at exciting students in regards to education? Because I think your point of it's good to excite them, but then the follow through has to be what have they learned? So how do you then balance that sort of getting the students excited as well as engaged and understanding the science and the work?
So see, that's literally our job in a nutshell, probably. So it's engaging our learners, engaging our students, doing what we can within the parameters to excite them, to make them fall in love with learning, fall in love with learning science, fall in love with learning chemistry. So that's our job, that hook, that connect, and whether it be through exciting practicals to launch lessons, whether it be either show-stopping moments, or maybe using music or a song when they come in, linking it to a movie, showing a trailer. Many things you can use, many things you can do. So I do think we are doing a good job, and it is an important part of the job, exciting our students. And I do think we're doing a very good job. Teachers are aware that that's needed while having to teach a subject.
Lovely. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19 and lockdown. How has that been for you?
How has it been for all of us, right? And I guess we're still in the lockdown,
Yeah.
even easing slightly, and we are edging closer to the end and the finish line. But no, it really has been a strange one, I guess. Unprecedented, just never in our lifetimes, and not for 100 years has it happened. But no, on a personal level, COVID-19 and the lockdown has given me, in all honesty, the chance to just reset a little, take a chill, just and just sit back for a bit, and focus more on the important things. Because literally, never has the world just paused like that for so long, and especially during the first lockdown, it was so sudden, and you literally just had so many hours on your day, more than you could maybe sometimes think to do with at that point. So no, really, it just gave me the chance to breathe and take life one step at a time.
I agree. I definitely agree that this is, the only time really that I think everybody has had to pause, stop, and everything. So I guess with regards to teaching, how have you found switching to online teaching?
At this stage, of course, we're back into live face-to-face teaching, but just before we went back, so we've been back since the 8th of March in teaching. So before then, when it was online learning and virtual learning through Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, I feel like we'd gotten to grips with online and virtual teaching. So we'd developed it to a very good standard and level that we were happy with. And that's because it had come such a long way in such a short space amount of time. The switch, a big job like that in getting the devices out there, getting our students on board, the technical issues, getting them signed in, teaching them how to use it, was, going from there to where we are now. It's a massive step that we've taken, massive step. And so it's been, a monumental progress, and the speed in which it's happened and getting everyone on board has been great. So no, it's been a big effort.
Yeah, I mean, we had to do, obviously do the switch and everything. And I don't think people appreciate how much of an effort it is and how much work comes into switching from face-to-face teaching to online teaching. And I know in particular for those in secondary school in particular, you've had a lot of kind of back and forth, start and stop, which I'm sure has added to the challenge as well. And so I guess with that, how do you feel the lockdown in particular might have impacted secondary school students? And there's also, is there going to be this sort of long-term consequence of them, quote unquote, missing out on education and peer interactions?
So a lot of the talk has been around that loss of learning, and it's true. There's no denying the fact that students the first time around probably lost nearly 6 months. This time around, they probably lost around 3 months of education. So no, there's no denying that there has been a loss of learning, and work will need to be done to address this. I do feel we as teachers think that's less of a problem, and what's more of a problem with the time away that our students have had has been the damage done to the culture that schools foster. And what I mean by that is students have forgotten routines, and teaching has become that much harder for the teacher now as a result. So we're less able to, at the moment, focus on the teaching of the science, the chemistry. We're having to more focus on classroom rules, routines, getting students to fall into those so that they can learn, because without those, it's harder to get learning across, and students inevitably learn less. I think that students have been affected in their mindset. They feel like the year has been wasted. What's the point? And so they feel less inclined to do as they were before. So no, I do think, yes, learning and the loss of learning's been massive, but we're concerned with other things rather than
Right,
that.
right. No, that's really good insight, because I think there's been a lot of, as I said, as you said, there's been a lot of talk about all these different things, and I think hearing for somebody such as yourself, like what exactly the real challenges are, is very important. And so, if I just come back to the online teaching, so do you, based on your experience, how do you feel online teaching during this time has transformed science education, and do you think it's added any benefit?
I do feel online teaching has transformed education, science education. I do think that. And it's really encouraged us as a profession to take to technology more than otherwise we had or would have. Now, of course, even then there's variation, and some schools have taken more to technology than others. But on the whole, generally speaking, a lot of us are using technology more than we used to, and I think that's a good thing, and it's improved our game, so to speak. So yeah, science education specifically has been transformed, but even teaching as a whole has transformed in how we teach, our blended approach to teaching and learning now. So getting the technology involved where possible, where it complements what we're teaching and how we're teaching it. So no, it's been a positive addition and to our repertoire and what we've got access to.
That's amazing. And so let's go outside of well, I say outside of your core work as a teacher. So I know you've got an Instagram page called Gram Science. What's that about?
So that's literally an Instagram page I opened recently during this second lockdown, actually. So a couple of months ago. So it's still quite new, and it's basically a page where I share my learning materials from my lessons on the page. So it's just in the hope that it provides someone revision material, students revision material, basically to practice with, questions to answer from their school. So something, so relevant, so applicable to thousands of students across the country, because it's exactly what's being taught in secondary schools live, and the day before. So it can help them complete their homework, prepare for exams, and it's just a page where I share parts of my day-to-day teaching.
Amazing. Just to confirm, is it Gram Science School?
Yes,
Gram Science
indeed. I
School.
think, yeah.
Good. That's good. So yeah, definitely it's a really good platform. Lots of resources on there, and even some motivation stuff. I like the post that you did on the 18th of March, the power of scaffolding. That's really, really cool. So yeah, and how are you finding that as how are you finding that as a extra activity during this time?
I'm enjoying really just putting information out there, being able to connect with people, with learners, educators, people that are following. And I hope it helps young people, and that's really the reason I've got the page set up, just so I can give them another source to turn to for revision prior to mock exams or GCSE exams or end of topic tests, for example.
That's amazing. And we've now come to the end of the episode. And I'm just going to ask you some, some concluding comments. So what does chemistry mean to you?
Chemistry to me means experiencing, understanding the world, basically, and then passing on the ability to understand the world to my students.
That's absolutely amazing and quite profound. And so, I guess from everything that we've talked about, what would you say, what would you say are the key take-home messages?
Key take-home messages would be that science education is just more important than ever before. The world has seen firsthand the need for scientists, doctors, nurses, and many others, and the role these professions play in our lives. So that would definitely be a key take-home message. Otherwise, the shortage in recruitment and retention in teaching and these sectors. So I really think we need to encourage more young people to pursue science at higher education. And really, as a person from inner London areas, born and brought up and of Bangladeshi origin, I think it's important that those of us that do have a platform, we speak out to show young students, the next generation of teachers, the teachers and doctors of tomorrow, that people like them, of their background, do work in these fields, and that it is possible. So that gives them hope, really, and serving to be that role model.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Monday Science podcast. Make sure to visit our website. Details are in the episode description, where you can subscribe to make sure that you never miss the show. So catch up with you next week. Bye.